Okay, it is 6:01 on Wednesday, November 12th. Call this meeting to order. Can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shukla. Commissioner Vander Gallion.
Here.
Commissioner Kwan.
Here.
Commissioner Martin.
Here.
Commissioner Harris.
Here.
Commissioner Willem.
Here.
Commissioner Booms. Vice Chair Warner.
Here.
And Chair Moore.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. Can I have a motion to approve our agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
Motion made by Vander Gallion, seconded by Evan Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Our motion's approved, our agenda's approved. Can I also have a motion to approve the minutes from our last commissioner meeting in October, along with the petition that was not included in our previous minutes?
Seconded.
Motion made by Vander Gallion, seconded by Harris. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Our minutes are approved. We did receive some written communication that was included in our packet. We also did receive communication after the packet was sent, and those will be submitted for the record for our December meeting. And then at this time, communications from the audience. I do have a couple cards for individuals wishing to speak. If there's members in the audience that would like to speak, please take a card so we can have your name for the record. So at this time, Molly, if you want to come up to speak, I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay. I don't need 5. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you MDOT for being here. It's actually. Okay. I do want to just ask, because we have MDOT here, to take a look at what has transpired since MDOT decided to raise speed limits in our town on both Saginaw and Grand River. Saginaw was 35. Grand River was 25. And as a result, we now have much louder traffic in our neighborhoods that are between those two roads. And there are a lot of people that live on Saginaw and live on Grand River that actually have to back out of their driveways. So, I mean, going from 35 miles per hour average daily traffic speed limit to 45, that's significant. And I think that the quality of life around town has been greatly reduced since the speed limits were increased. I know there are some community members that like to go fast. I personally don't when I'm in town. I like to go fast on a highway. I go the speed limit on a highway, but when I'm driving in town, I go the speed limit because I'm respectful of neighborhoods and schools, sidewalks, bicyclists, pedestrians, dogs, kids. And I just think that the rest of the country is moving away from Fast and the Furious, and I feel we aren't. yet, but we need to start. We need to start looking at quality of life, safety, icy roads. I would like MDOT to share with the city crash statistics at Saginaw and Hagedorn. I think that every week I get an alert on my phone that there's a very bad accident there. And it's dangerous. There are schools on Saginaw that were not taken into account when that speed limit was increased. There's St. Thomas at Alton, the high school, Glencairn, Donnelly, Marble, McDonald Middle School, all that school traffic, and we have to go 45 miles per hour. Why? So it upsets me. And in fact, when Saginaw was increased to 45 miles per hour, my mom called me. They lived in White Hills at the time. She said, "Oh my gosh, that's the last straw. We're moving because the quality of life will go down." And she was right. So I would like MDOT, instead of suing the city, which is what happened when the city said, "Please don't raise our speed limits. We don't want that." MDOT sued us. And I would like an adult conversation, data, crash statistics, and to come to the table and come up with a good solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. And Carissa, you want to come up to speak? Then I'll give you 5 minutes as well.
I would, just before I get started, actually like to echo what Molly has said, and that the quality of life is a significant problem along these MDOT trunk lines. So this has done extraordinary damage to our community by raising these speed limits, including right next to our school, which is what I'm going to talk to you all about tonight. So I'm here to provide comments regarding the proposed permanent improvements to the Glencairn Elementary School crosswalk at Harrison and Northland. I do really greatly appreciate the progress that's been made in phase 1. And remain hopeful about the next steps, though I do have some concerns about how the final design is being developed. My main concern is that the recommendations appear to have moved to the Transportation Commission very soon after Monday's neighborhood meeting, which did not allow sufficient time for the engineering team to fully integrate community input. The memo from the Spicer Group to the Transportation Commission that was included in the agenda packet for tonight was dated on November 10th. The day of the public hearing, which was presumably written during business hours before the neighborhood meeting even took place. The Glencairn Elementary School Council is expected to issue a letter following its meeting tomorrow expressing similar concerns and requesting that a second public meeting be held, as was indicated was planned on the Harrison Road Rehabilitation website. This meeting would allow residents to review the final plans and confirm that neighborhood feedback has been meaningfully considered. There is strong community support for the following safety improvements at this crosswalk. 1, ensuring that the radar speed signs are hardwired so that they function reliably through the winter months. 2, installing a Hawk device to require traffic to stop as opposed to an RRFB, which relies on drivers voluntarily stopping. 3, revisiting the proposed truck restriction to align with established precedent by regulating based on weight, for example, prohibiting trucks over 5 tons, or by axle count, such as prohibiting trucks over 3 axles rather than by truck class, which is an unusual restriction. This is the first truck restriction to my knowledge in this city, and it is imperative that it sets the correct precedent for the city. The fourth aspect that has wide community support is for optical speed bars and yield triangles, while noting limited neighborhood support for an overhead crosswalk sign. 5, support for widening the east side sidewalk between North Lawn and the crosswalk to better accommodate pedestrian and bicycle traffic during school hours. And 6, there is support for speed cameras, which could play a part in alleviating some of the city's financial problems. 7, there is support for reassessing the proposed pedestrian refuge island, as widening the roadway may reduce pedestrian safety and may bring children closer to moving cars while waiting to cross. Widening a road rarely results in safer conditions for pedestrians, as it increases the time a pedestrian is in the roadway. Instead, there is strong community preference for a raised crosswalk. The raised crosswalk has broad support from residents and was a specific request included in the community petition. It is also supported by the East Lansing Board of Education and Representative Cernoglu's office, as well as this commission, which supported it in May. Concerns raised about drainage, emergency response, and snow removal appear to be manageable, particularly given the successful examples of raised crosswalks on high-volume roads at MSU. I am confident that the engineering team has the expertise to design effective drainage solutions for a raised crosswalk. Emergency responders are already trained and expected to slow down or stop as needed at intersections with traffic signals. So incorporating a raised crosswalk to promote safer speeds should not significantly impede their ability to respond quickly and effectively. Regarding snow removal, MSU has demonstrated that roads with raised crosswalks, such as Farm Lane, can be maintained successfully through the winter, and I believe that the city of East Lansing can achieve similar results. My main request is that the city delay the final recommendations until a second public meeting be held as outlined on the Harrison Road Rehabilitation website, and to ensure that the community has an opportunity to review and provide input on the final plans. Harrison Road is a major crossing for our school community, and redesign opportunities like this are rare. It is essential that the final plan reflect both sound engineering and genuine community input before moving the project forward. So that's my hope for all of this. And it is my hope that the city will move in a direction in which pedestrians and bicyclists, and especially young children, are valued as part of the transportation network. And that actually starts with MDOT, and it starts with our Department of Public Works. We plan on keeping all of you accountable.
And then, Brianna, did you want to speak now at 4.0?
Somebody was going to be in between three of us. Jeez. Okay.
Just give your name for the record, and then I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay. Brianna Egan, Chesterfield Hills resident. I'm probably going to speak to the intersection because I'm in Chesterfield Hills later. But for right now, I missed the last Transportation Commission meeting, so I just want to do a level set really quick, hopefully really quick. Thanks for having us. Thanks for all the work that you guys have done. You know, I've thanked you all before for all the work that you put in and the time that you spent. Some of you, a lot of time, so appreciate it. I do want to reflect on what I've heard from the last Transportation Commission meeting. I hear it did not go calm and collected. So this commission was created to be neighbors helping neighbors, not neighbors silencing neighbors. Yet it does feel like, and you know, the city itself and city representation, yet over the last few years, that spirit has been lost. And instead of listening, too often this body and DPW have tone policed, redirected, or shamed the very parents and residents fighting to keep their children safe. When citizens raise issues about speeding, reckless driving, or dangerous crossings, we're sent a 5-page bureaucratic traffic calming plan that was changed again in 2024 to unweigh all petitions from the neighborhoods. But it burdens residents with proving problems the city should already be addressing. Then the city commissions expensive studies based on misinterpreted complaints. I know this from firsthand. Studies that somehow always conclude our concerns are not significant. I know that firsthand. After a car lost control and nearly hit my 2-year-old daughter, a former commissioner writing from another state felt compelled to counter my firsthand account, citing an old study that found no significant issue in my neighborhood. That was almost 3 years ago, and I was never helped. That's what residents are up against. It's become clear from recent Transportation Commission meetings and from testimony and residents across the city that the East Lansing Traffic Calming Plan emboldens biased data collection and arbitrary decision-making. The plan disenfranchises residents in 2 key ways. First, it places burden entirely on citizens to prove the problem exists. Even if 85% of the neighborhood agrees on the safety concerns, that still doesn't weigh into whether or not the actual concern is addressed or their reality is affirmed. Second, once residents do meet that burden, their input is ignored in favor of staff discretion and outdated thresholds that prioritize vehicle flow over human safety, inapplicable standards for neighborhood and school zones, I might add. And in this way, the city filters who gets heard. The way that the city filters who gets heard only deepens this inequity. A single parent walking their child to school from the apartment south of Grand River in my neighborhood shouldn't have to research policy manuals, circulate petitions, or learn the MMUTCD just to fix a broken signal button or an unsafe crosswalk, and then hound elected officials because 85% of the street agreeing on a problem still isn't enough. That's obstruction and privilege disguised as process. It's no wonder we have road diets that ignored middle school car lines like in Southeast Marble, or pedestrian islands that are unsafe for children and were hit twice in 24 hours. Who was in the room when those plans were approved? Who was missing? What is the purpose of this commission if it simply defers to DPW and special interests or signs off on disenfranchisement of the very residents it was meant to represent? In 2024, you all approved changes to the traffic calming plan that stripped away the only neighbor-driven tools residents had to advocate for themselves. If this commission won't witness to and amplify the real concerns they hear from their neighbors, then you are here for the wrong reason. Those of you with expertise should be helping these folks. These parents have been gaslit for years and then undermined by the process you all voted for. I'm not saying you did it on purpose, but that's what happened. Only to be given solutions that don't even fit the problem they wrote and called about. We have to set alerts and tag team meetings to make sure that a simple thing like having the right street name on a TCO gets fixed, or making sure that we have the time we were told we were going to have. And some of you could have helped, but you chose to protect your access and priorities, and then had the audacity to try and slap down those women who have done more for traffic safety in 6 months than this commission has done in years. Whatever feelings you have in response to a pissed off mom begging for help is your problem, not anyone else's. And I promise you, at this point, we've gotten really good at this. And we will actively block every single traffic project that doesn't make it safer for all non-motorized users. I ran out of breath, sorry, I should have taken a deep one. The city loves to say it's data-driven, but data without context, without community, and without empathy is just bureaucracy. I'm almost done, I promise. It is much more advisable to work with a bunch of pissed off moms than it is to actively work against us. It's extremely unwise to shush them or try to exert some new age misogynistic nonsense over them when they ask to team up. You can start over now, though. You can start listening again, and you can make sure every family, whether they live in a cul-de-sac or an apartment, can safely walk, roll, or ride without fear. Because that is who you are here to help, not DPW, not MDOT, not two random bicyclists at a public meeting in 2019 that no working parent knew about, because that's what public service is. Thank you for your time.
Other members from the audience wishing to speak? So 4.1, discussion on Harrison Road Rehabilitation Project Phase 2. Is there any, before the consultant does the same presentation he did for the meeting on Monday, is there any members from the audience wishing to speak to us on this item? It came before our packet, so it'll be included in our meeting minutes for December. Yeah, you can speak. Yep, you have 5 minutes to speak to this agenda item.
Sorry, I do have a card too, but I sent it yesterday thinking that it was enough time.
It was a state holiday. We were.
Oh, what was it? When was the meeting? Yeah, yesterday. Okay. Well, the community meeting was last night. And so after Monday night. Okay. So I sent it Tuesday. That's what the problem was. Sorry, guys, working mom. Yeah, so I sent this about the Harrison Road Rehab Project and the trucks in particular and what we can do for safety. So at the meeting, I mentioned a formula at the community meeting on the relationship between speed and at impact and likelihood of death or severe injury. And the way that that's being used or not used proves that the decision to limit to Class 8 trucks does nothing to make the kids and our other vulnerable road users more safe. If we were prioritizing the public safety and well-being of these children, then we'd be doing this through a lens of highest ROI and safety. And there seems to be some really obvious solutions. This is also a moral decision that belongs to the community, not DPW or anyone else at midnight during a council meeting. I don't want to take up too much time here, but the principle and formula I was talking about was the well-established principle in traffic engineering and physics that there is a direct and positive relationship between speed and the severity of pedestrian injury and vehicle-pedestrian crashes. With regard to crash severity, the operating speed of the motor vehicles directly affects the crash outcome. In this case, higher vehicle operating speeds are associated with more severe crashes. This is the result of kinetic energy dissipated during a crash event. The kinetic energy is associated with, you guys understand the science. The faster something goes, the more velocity it's going to do more damage, right? Okay. Studies show that the probability of severe injury is about 10% at 25 miles per hour, which is a school zone, but rises to 75% at 40 miles per hour. Similarly, the fatality risk, approximately 10% at 24 miles per hour, 25% at 32, and 50 at 40 miles per hour. You may justifiably wonder why I mentioned this when we're talking about trucks, and since the trucks complaint and that crossing complaint wasn't necessarily about speed. And it's because generally for any given speed, a pedestrian struck by a heavy truck has a higher risk of severe injury or death than one struck by a car. In full transparency, when you correct for age and heavy vehicle data, it shows that seniors are more at risk than children, but that is directly related to the frequency with which children are alone, walking alone around large trucks without an adult. The mere existence of a large truck in a school zone disrupts all calculations that determine risk. That includes the calculations that you use for school crossings. Class 7 and Class 8 trucks passing through a school zone shifts the graph even more to the left, ultimately making speed and the difference between a 7 and an 8 insignificant variables. Choosing to only limit to Class 8, which we learned is only 8 to 9 trucks a day, when Class 7 trucks are 30 to 40 trucks a day, is a moral decision, like I said, to prioritize trucking companies and MDOT contractors over 5 to 10-year-olds, because that's an elementary school crossing. This action taken in the dead of night at the end of a council meeting ignores the community's right to public safety, equal representation under the 14th representative government, and sorry, my eyes are bad, disregards our community's moral obligation to the public school children's safety and our child's right to free education under the 14th. Allowing large trucks to tear apart our city, road, and school zone, both paid for by taxpayers of this community, both indirectly and directly, is an abuse of power and contrary to the intent and the rights established under the origination clause. We cannot move the elementary school. It is not our fault that there is never-ending construction on campus and on 127. Most of which these trucking companies are benefiting from. So maybe it's time for some way to find a way to tax these trucks or let them go to any other road that does not have an ELPS elementary school crossing on it. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Yep, you have 5 minutes if you want. Yep, Carissa, you come on back.
So in addition to the items that I had already spoke to on this, what has a lot of community support and what doesn't, I think the one that really from the community we are most puzzled about is the Class 8 and up. I also watched that live on the city council when they were doing this. It was at 11:30 at night. That was not published to the community in advance that was going to be the proposal. And it also follows zero legal precedent. So I've looked at multiple truck restrictions across the state, including all of them that was included in the agenda packet. There is no legal precedent for this. So this sets up a regulatory issue, and it also sets up a huge liability issue for the city, of which I don't think the city needs any more of. So when we looked at these truck route restrictions, which by the way, both Lansing and Meridian Township have it, that's actually one of the ways you leave East Lansing is that you can see on some of these roads like Forest Road or Park Lake Road going into Meridian Township, Forest Road going into Lansing, there are no truck signs and they don't have this little thing attached to it that says Class 8 and above. I have spoken with multiple truck drivers, people who've driven a truck in the past, including my husband, and 2 commercial vehicle enforcement officers. No one has a clue about what class trucks are. There is no precedent for this whatsoever. And I would be very curious from the staff as to how that was developed, because it seems rather arbitrary and it feels like it was done to undermine the massive amount of efforts the Glen Cairn Elementary School Community Council, myself, other parents have done. We've run into nothing but one roadblock after another. We've started off polite, nice, and now we're just pissed because we've been undermined at one moment after another. And this is an excellent example of it, where it's usually they're done by axle or tons, right, or weight, which was actually what this commission had recommended to do in May, and which is typically 5 tons or 3 axles or above. Why do I have to become an expert in what truck restrictions are as a parent in this city is really quite beyond me on how much we've had to work to protect our children. So I'm asking the commission to step up here, ask the same questions. Why did this become a Class 8 and above? Why is East Lansing behind the curve with Meridian Township and Lansing and even addressing the truck issue to begin with? Of course, there's many other issues as well. The trucks at this point have free reign in the city. We've seen Michigan trains, which by the way are heavily restricted in majority of other states, on Bircham with bikers and as well as all of the schools too. So we're frustrated, and people don't come up and get as passionate and angry about this as us parents have, unless we have felt unheard for an extended period of time. And we are grateful that there have been steps that have been taken. They just don't feel like we've been fully heard, or that this commission or even DPW wants to hear us. And as a taxpayer in this city, I'm not trying to sound entitled, but this is the expectation as a citizen in this community, is to have services that work for, not against, our community.
Is there any other members of the audience wishing to speak on this item? Okay. I'd like to invite the consultant to come up to give the presentation on phase 2 recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Niederquill. I work for Spicer Group. I'm a civil engineer. I'm a professional engineer. Been designing road projects in Michigan for 26 years for state, county, and local, both city and village projects. So we started this project in mid-June. I believe June 17th, we were authorized by the city for this 3-phase project. June 18th, we jumped in and had a kickoff meeting with the city to begin phase 1. Phase 1, we had neighborhood meetings. We had prepared a report and recommendation to the city for things that could be done immediately on Harrison Road or the study area from Saginaw down to South Lawn. We presented at council July 15th for the phase 1 items. On the screen on the board is some of the phase 1 things that were recommended and done for the project. So some of the immediate and short-term things that were improved were pavement markings. Center line markings were widened from 4-inch yellow center line to 6-inch yellow center line. There were no edge lines. There's curb and gutter on both sides of the road. We recommended adding white edge lines to both sides of the road. So 6-inch edge lines were added, not just 4-inch. So what this did was allowed for a different feel of the roadway. Sorry, rather than just here's the old roadway. The pavement markings added emphasis that, oh, hey, I'm in a little bit more of a neighborhood setting. Maybe I should slow down a little bit. So those edge line and center line markings were upgraded and added. Permanent signing. So a lot of people don't look at signs, but signs are important from a regulatory perspective, from a warning perspective, from a guide perspective. And signs happen over time, right? A sign gets put in 1 year, 5 years later, another sign gets put in, 2 years later, another sign gets put in. So you kind of get sign clutter, sign disarray. So it's good to look at a corridor and upgrade the signs all at once and bring things into compliance and in standards. A sign as a proper spot and a proper time for it along a roadway, beside a roadway. You don't put a sign just any old where. It's got to be in a proper location. So, and standards change both federally and state. So we looked at all the signs and recommended upgrades to the permanent signing, specifically at the school crossing area related to the school and regulatory signs. Those improvements were done by the city staff end of August before school started. Can you go back one slide? Thanks. Speed feedback radar sign. So there was a sign or two within the corridor over time. We recommended that the sign be instituted, put back in place in the field. So that was done the end of the summer as well. One other thing we recommended was lighting the crosswalk at Glen Caron. And the city worked with Lansing Board of Water and Light to have the wood pole and proper light installed at the crosswalk. So those were the things that could be done immediately before school started, and they were all done. So Stephen, if you go to the next slide now. So here it shows a picture of the crosswalk back in June, July. You can see there the old edge lines, the old crosswalk lines, and these are special emphasis crosswalk lines, but you can see they're kind of half missing on some of them and a little tethered. So those were all freshened up and redone as well. The signs, like I said, some of them were not standard signs and not in the standard location. Those were all upgraded and fixed as well. So this is old, and we flip one more slide forward, we'll see the new. This is the result of the phase one study. You can see the signs in the center line of the road, on the edge of the road too, about yielding to pedestrians in the crosswalk. Those were added as well. So that's the fresh look at that. So now we moved into phase two. So phase two, we didn't start immediately in July. We waited for school to start. Why? We didn't want to do a study in August when there were no kids going to school. We wanted to have traffic and school pedestrian patterns at a normal school pace. So again, we didn't start the first week of school. We waited until the week of September 9th. So traffic had kind of settled into its place and people had their routine moving forward. So what did we do in phase two? We studied vehicles. From vehicles, we set traffic counters at Glen Cairn Elementary School. We set traffic counters south of South Lawn. We studied each direction, both northbound and southbound. We looked at traffic volumes, how many cars per day. We looked at classifications, what type vehicles, from motorcycles, cars, trucks, all the way up through the full spectrum, and we studied speeds. The initial study we did in September, the speeds, unfortunately, at the elementary school crossing were not usable. They were null and void due to the cars that were stopping on the counters and slow moving on the counters. We could not use the data at the crosswalk for speed. We did have good data south of South Lawn for speed. Now, that being said, we did take and go out and put counters out, it was last week actually, and do a second study to see if we could get better speed data at the crossing. So what we did with that crossing study last week, or speed volume study, was we actually pulled the tubes from the counters for an hour period during the school drop off and an hour period during the school pickup. So then the data would be usable outside of that school timeline. So we collected that data last week, and we had very short time to do analysis on that data in advance of Monday's neighborhood meeting. Another big part of phase two was reviewing the vertical curve, the hill south of North Lawn. Part of the study was to review, is there anything that should be done with the hill? Meaning, should the hill be lowered? Should the hill be cut down to increase sight distance and visibility to the crosswalk? So with the project, we acquired the topography of the roadway from Grand River to Saginaw, the survey, from right away to right away and everything between the whole length of the project. So that allowed us to study the data, look at the slopes of the roadway. And we also measured the stopping sight distance from the top of the hill to the crosswalk. Stopping sight distance is a measure of what the driver can see from the vehicle to a point on the roadway. It's 3.5 foot height of eye to 3.5 foot height of object. So today's cars are a mix of, Corvettes, low bottom heights, to, our big SUVs, greater than 3.5 foot. So 3.5 foot is the federal height of eye for stopping sight distance. There is 496 feet of sight distance from the top of the hill to the crosswalk. The required stopping sight distance on this roadway, this speed, is only 215 feet. So it's more than double the stopping sight distance required for a roadway of this classification and speed. So knowing that, we are not recommending, lowering the hill because it is adequate for the roadway. We did a crash review. MDOT practice on a roadway is to do a 3-year crash review. So we reviewed data from 22, 23, 24. We found about 26 crashes within the roadway. 95% of those crashes were either at the Grand River Avenue intersection or at the Saginaw intersection. There were 2 crashes in the middle of the project. One I think was at Wildwood. There was one at North Lawn. It was an eastbound vehicle. Got to the stop sign, stopped, proceeded to cross Harrison, was hit by a southbound vehicle. So again, nothing to do with the hill or the crosswalk, just a driver error, let's say. That was the crash review. Next up, we reviewed the truck scenario from the classification data that we collected. And we have recommendation on, continuing the traffic control order for restricting trucks. I've got some more, recommendations in the report, but that's the traffic synopsis. Next slide, please. So what do we do now with so now we have the traffic counts. Oh, I didn't mention, we took pedestrian counts at the crosswalk during the school morning drop off and the school afternoon pickup. So now what do you do with the crosswalk data and the vehicle data? Now you go to a chart in the guidance, and what does this crosswalk qualify for? What should we do with the crosswalk based on the volumes of cars, based on the volumes of pedestrians? Pedestrians are on the vertical axis, cars are on the horizontal axis. We plot the points, and that's the blue diamond that falls between the green and yellow lines. This crossing falls within a rapid rectangular flashing beacon scenario, and I've got a picture of that, I think, on the next slide. It does not qualify for a hawk signal. A hawk is a pedestrian hybrid beacon which stops traffic. A rapid rectangular flashing beacon does not stop traffic. It's just a warning to drivers when a pedestrian pushes the button on the side of the road. Next slide, please. Here's an example picture of a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, also known as RRFB for short. The beacon is between the school sign and the diagonal down arrow sign, and it will flash when someone pushes the button. There's the warning on both sides of the road, both front and back on the sign. So that's an RRFB. Next slide, please. Recommendation. So an RRFB is the recommendation for this project. The truck restriction, as was mentioned earlier, class 8 and above was the initial recommendation here. And I don't believe that the city has a weighmaster currently. So weight is one way to control traffic, axles is one way to control traffic, or classifications is another. I don't know how much a truck weighs or how much a car weighs. That would require, bringing somebody else into the equation. Axles, that's not a bad way to control it either, but classifications, there are 13 classifications, federal highway classifications that, and of course the general public doesn't know what a class 4 truck is or a class 8 truck, but, public officials, and obviously truck drivers, they know what classification they are. So we recommended via the classification method.
Can you explain to the commission what a class 8 and above is, just so we have a visual of what
Sure.
we can wrap our head around what that prohibition means?
I'm going to start with class 1 motorcycle, class 2 cars, class 3 trucks. Okay. And then when you get up to the 8, and they're kind of a little out of order, meaning, and don't quote me on these, but they kind of go like if I start with an 8 off of memory, 4 axle or greater, but it's a configuration, meaning how is the truck and the truck trailer configured and how are the wheels? Is it a tractor trailer scenario? Is it a box truck scenario? Is it all the axles? Are you gonna be able to pull up my, there you go, that one right there. Thank you. So upper right-hand corner is the axles, or class 7s, which is like a cement truck, and then a big, large vehicle with 4 or more axles. But going to 8, it's the 4 or less with a single trailer. So 2 axles on a truck, 2 axles on a trailer, or less. 9, the 5 axles, semi-truck trailer. 10, 6 or more, with a single trailer, 11, 5 or less, multi-trailer though, 12, 6 axles, multi-trailer, 13, 7 or more, and multi-trailer. So that's the breakdown of federal highways classifications. Yep. For class or after trucks, there we go. So another recommendation for this roadway, for Harrison Road, optical speed bars. So it's a pavement marking put along the side of the road, both edges of the lane, the center line, the outside, that are meant to decrease your speedway. You're driving down the road, the markings are at an interval, the markings get closer, the interval decreases, that gives the feeling that, oh, I'm driving faster, maybe I should slow down, because the pavement markings seem to be coming at you faster because they're at a closer interval. So optical speed bars are something we recommended for the area at the crossing. Next slide. Yield triangles are a recommendation on both sides in advance of the crossing to be put on the pavement. Again, pavement markings, kind of hard to see up there. They're small. There's like 3 or 4 triangles per lane, per direction. Again, in advance of the crossing. Next slide. An overhead crosswalk sign. So there's school crossing signs on the side of the road. We added the school small short sign on the center line of the road. Here's another way to bring emphasis to the crosswalk with an overhead illuminated sign. And this is an example that's on a steel mast arm, hung, suspended over the center of the road. Another way to do this is with standard wood poles, simple span wire, kind of like a traffic signal, and the same illuminated lighted sign. Again, you'd have one in each direction over the crosswalk to bring emphasis to the school crossing. And this one is like an old yellow color. I would do it the same fluorescent. It's called fluorescent yellow green. That's the school color. I wouldn't go with the warning yellow. I would go with the fluorescent green to match the school. Next slide. So in summary, what are we recommending here for the crossing on Harrison Road? Keep the optical speed feedback signs. Keep the 6-inch center line paver marking. Keep the 6-inch edge line paver markings. Install an RRFB, rapid rectangular flashing beacon. Restrict trucks, classes 8 and greater. Install the optical speed bar pavement markings. Install the yield triangular pavement markings. And install the overhead crosswalk sign. Got a couple additional considerations here. Pedestrian refuge island in the city has one on Hagedorn Road, for example. Now, Hagedorn Road is a 3-lane road, not a 2-lane road. So the Hagedorn Road refuge island is planted firmly in the middle. There's no taper required or anything. On Harrison Road, to put a refuge island, you'd have to widen on one side or widen on both sides to create an island. So that doesn't come with some, reservations or setbacks, meaning, yep, now you're going to be closer to the sidewalk. So, okay, we can push the sidewalk out a little bit. Harrison Road is not centered on the right of way. The section line, which is the center of the right of way, is offset about 7 feet on the road. Just however that happened 150 years ago, or when Michigan was platted and the road was built over time, it's staggered a little bit. And the sidewalk is not at the right-of-way line like it is in some cases. It's actually in closer to the road. So the sidewalk could be pushed out a little bit in order to widen to create a median island within the roadway here. So the median island is meant to slow cars down a little bit. Hey, I'm coming to something here again. I better pay attention. I better slow down. And it's also to provide safer access for pedestrians. You're going to cross the road. You either have to cross both lanes at the same time with no island, or if you have a refuge island that allows a pedestrian to cross one lane at a time, wait for the next gap in the other direction and cross the other direction. So it's meant to provide a safer crossing, also meant to help slow down vehicles. An additional consideration that could be undertaken is installing an additional warning beacon above a static sign in advance of the crossing. So that could be above the advanced school crossing sign or above the intersection sign to the south. So as you're going north, you're coming to the crest of the hill, there's a beacon above, the school crossing sign or the intersection warning sign that if a rapid rectangular flashing beacon were to be installed, could be connected to the push button. So pedestrian comes up, wants to cross the road, they push the button, they get the rapid rectangular flashing beacon at the crossing. Well, guess what? The advanced beacon above the warning sign also starts flashing. So it could be connected to that. Or you could have a beacon that just runs 24/7, but then are you really drawing emphasis to the case where there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk, not if it's running 24/7? And I've got a picture of the island and the beacon here in a second. A couple things we're not recommending are centerline corrugations. So MDOT does centerline corrugations on state highways, not in cities. They do them in rural areas. You've all felt them, the rumble strips on the centerline of the road. Rumble strips are meant to control runoff road crashes and head-on crashes when you're, leave your lane departure. That's the word I was looking for. Transverse rumble strips, were considered. We're not recommending them. They are, and you've all felt them when you're driving into a work zone on I-96, I-69, I-75. They're transverse devices across the roadway in series of, 8 or 10 in a row, and then a gap, and then another number of them melt to wake you up and warn you that, hey, I'm coming into something, slow down. Problem with Harrison Road is it's a very residential area. It's all residential other than the school. If you live next to the rumble strips, you're going to hear those rumble strips 7,137 times a day when cars go over the rumble strips. So being the residential neighborhood area, we're not recommending the rumble strips. As I mentioned earlier, the vertical curve, the hill south of the crossing, we're not recommending cutting that down. Because one, like I said, we have twice the sight distance required. If you do cut the hill down, you're going to lose the old large historic, for lack of a better word, trees. You're going to cause other implications to underground utilities, meaning water main that's under the road has to have a certain number of cover, certain depth of cover, 5.5 foot of cover on it. Because in Michigan, we start to be, freezing when we get to November. Reducing the cover on water main would not be a good thing. So the water main would have to be lowered. Gas main needs cover. You got phone lines and other things in the vicinity. So, cutting down the hill would not create a noticeable benefit when you actually have the sight distance already. Next slide, I think, has the refuge island picture, and this is Hagedorn. Now, one benefit of a refuge island, as you can see in this photo here, the small state law yield to pedestrians within crosswalk sign, that a refuge island is a great place to keep that sign so it's out of harm's way in the winter when we start snow plowing. On Harrison Road right now, those signs are probably going to be getting hit as we start plowing snow. But the refuge island provides a safe spot for that sign too to be in place year round and draw attention to the crossing. Next slide. So here is a warning beacon I spoke of. It's a flashing beacon, above a sign along the side of the roadway. Then the next slide we added after the neighborhood meeting Monday night. So this was not in the presentation Monday. We added this based on the feedback that we received at the meeting Monday night. So what we heard in the meeting, and there were about 28, 29 people at the meeting, so it was good attendance. Some less desirable things. The pedestrian refuge island didn't seem to be like it was a big hit by the residents, and probably half the people spoke up during the meeting, some multiple times. The overhead crosswalk sign was not, didn't feel like it was super well received. So those are, I'm calling less desirable items from Monday. More desirable things are the raised crosswalk, which, and actually I'm showing the picture of a raised crosswalk on MSU campus here. There seemed to be a lot of interest in the raised crosswalk. And I guess one thing why that wasn't in the initial recommendations was we were a little hesitant on it initially due to the type of roadway, meaning it's a city major street. It is a truck route, and yes, trucks are, going to be restricted of certain classifications. It is only a 25-mile-an-hour road. That's good. So initially we're a little hesitant. Now, since the meeting, we've done some more research from Federal Highway Administration, from the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, and we've found guidance that says when you're less 30 miles an hour or less, and other considerations, it actually is an applicable treatment for crossings. So yeah, and like someone said earlier, there's not a whole lot of time. This is happening really fast, and we are still going to look into it, but that might be an item that we can recommend to council as a feature, the crosswalk. Initially the concerns were, are they good for emergency vehicles, meaning police and fire and ambulance? Are they good for, and we raised a slight concern with drainage. Obviously, if you're doing a raised crosswalk, you're creating a barrier, and an extra pair of catch basins on the side of the road are required. Catch basins are easily designable. We can overcome that, of course. Else with the crosswalk. I mean, there are good crosswalks and there are bad crosswalks. We would design it appropriately and not design it to be too abrupt and not appropriate for the speeds and volumes and widths and lengths and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I have a question since we're on this topic.
Sure.
I know, since being chair and being on this body, we have always advocated for tools that actually, do traffic calming and to protect pedestrians from crossing certain streets. And, reading your proposal and saying a raised crosswalk could, in theory, happen, is a raised crosswalk a tool to also slow traffic? Is it a traffic calming measure as well?
Yes.
Is it, so it is like a pedestrian island is, correct?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. I know sometimes we have recommended before pedestrian islands, we have never actually recommended a raised crosswalk before, but obviously I wanted to make sure that it is considered a tool to do traffic calming. Thank you.
The next thing that was more desirable from the meeting Monday night was, so we have an enhanced crosswalk pavement markings already. We have the longitudinal bars, pavement markings running the same direction of traffic. A resident asked if we can do both, meaning do the longitudinal bars and the transverse lines. That is actually an option, and we can do that. I think years ago it wasn't recommended to do both, but in current guidance, it is allowable. So that is something that could be easily done too. Another thing that was brought up Monday was enforcement, meaning we can do all the greatest engineering things in the world. We can put the greatest things on the roadway. We can make it as safe as possible. But, enforcement is another component to the equation, meaning city, county, state enforcement on any roadway. There has to be an enforcement component to make to keep people safe as well. Seemed to be sentiment that, maybe the city could be doing more, and we have heard that, there's the potential to be putting more officers on the road and everything. So, I mean, that is a good thing and a key thing that would continue to keep people safe. Bus stop. So there's 3 CATA bus stops on Harrison Road in one direction and 2 in the other direction. Well, a pair of them are right at this crosswalk. That was something that was brought up, that is that really the best spot for buses to be stopping, where, kids are crossing the road and at a crosswalk of any stance. I know the city has reached out to CATA to inquire about that location. Is there any adjustment that can happen to that? Can it be moved? Just seems like that might not be the best location for that. So that was another consideration. I think, Stephen, that's the end of my presentation. Let me just go through my little cheat sheet here to see if there's anything else I kind of glossed over or missed, but yeah, back to the truck restriction. So Harrison Road has 11-foot lanes, not 12-foot lanes. 11-foot are acceptable for the roadway classification, acceptable for the speed, acceptable for the volumes, but they're not 12. So they are a little bit narrower. 12 is the standard. If this road were to be reconstructed, that means totally torn out and down to sub-base and new sand, new aggregate, new asphalt or concrete put back in. 12-foot would be required. Being that this project is a rehabilitation allows 11-foot lanes to still be acceptable. But my point was related to the truck restriction, that we agreed with only being 11-foot lanes, the fact that there's sidewalk right on the back of curb from South Lawn to North Lawn, not separated. So people are walking 2 foot away from vehicles traveling, and then the fact that there's the school crossing. We concurred with the truck restriction.
Can I jump in and ask a question on that? Can you help us understand how you arrived at the class 8 level? It looks to me, based on the traffic counts, that in a single day, we counted more class 7 trucks than we counted in the entire period of class 8 and above. So we could probably throw a bigger net if we just decreased by 1 class.
That's a good question and a fair question, a fair ask. Sure, go ahead, Ron.
I can have contact Ron Goss, Director of Public Works. The reason we looked at the class 8 was because the Transportation Commission had recommended that we bring that to council back in November, I think. So we put it on the agenda for the last meeting. Because the data hadn't been fully analyzed yet, we'd asked council to wait until this final analysis to make a recommendation. However, if they wanted to make one before, we recommended class 8 and above. And the reason was because the count, I'm trying to remember, between like 1 and 6 per day was the class 8 and above. And the class 7s with a lot more trucks. And before we would restrict that level of truck, we would want to know more information. Where are they coming from? Where are they going to? If you're going to displace that many vehicles, we need to understand where they're going to go, what impact that's going to have on the rest of the network. And that's a discussion that certainly can be had. I think Stephen has put out some other communities that have done truck routes. A lot of those have industry and things that cause that, but that's kind of a bigger discussion, bigger study, destination studies, that type of thing, what impact it's going to have. So that would be a broader discussion down the road. And we want to wait until 127 opens back up, and because we think that will impact truck traffic through the city, if that helps with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So we're gonna have questions with the consultant, and then we will be taking action on this item to give a recommendation to city council. So if there's any questions for the consultant, now is your time to ask. Nathan.
I have a question on the slides of the recommended and the additional, and then the feedback you received. It seemed to suggest that the overhead crossing and the pedestrian island were less desirable. Is there any feedback that suggested that those would not help at least solve some of the problem, if not the only thing that would happen?
So I don't know that there's necessarily feedback Monday night. One comment on the hybrid island, for example, was that so in order to go around the island, obviously you've got to taper to the right and go around the island. One of the comments was, well, we're going to point cars right at the pedestrians that are waiting to cross. Whether that's, partly true or wholly true. Obviously they're going to be in their lane, and a student or child or adult is going to be standing behind the curb, hopefully. So I don't know that to be fully true, because they should be behind the curb, whether there's an island there or not an island. And I don't think that putting an island in is going to point the cars at someone behind the curb, because they're still going to be behind the curb. And we would widen both sides of the road to create that space. Like I said, we'd have to push the sidewalk out as well to maintain the space there. So that was a comment Monday night.
In that same kind of question for the overhead crossing, is there reason to believe that that would be a negative thing in any way, or just not a belief that it might contribute enough to be the problem solver?
I think maybe one, and I'm inferring on someone's comment, that it would just be one more, yellow thing at the area, and one more light, light pollution. Not saying that word was not used, but the person just didn't see the value of that.
Okay. With an overhead crossing infrastructure like that, when we talked about the rapid flashing and then not meeting the Hawk requirement, with an overhead, you were showing the posts for the cable, is that infrastructure that if we decided in the future we did want to move to a Hawk, that you could reuse that same infrastructure to host the Hawk facility?
Absolutely. If you go with the 2 wood pole method with the span wire, yes, that could be converted to a Hawk.
So it wouldn't be lost expense now if we decided to upgrade.
Correct.
Moving forward.
And let me just expand upon my comment too. So that's the one method. 2 wood poles, span wire, that can be reused. The other method is steel mast arm, steel cantilever, connected. The signs could be hung on that. And I hadn't thought about this until now, but that could be converted into Hawk as well, because the Hawk is, a couple signals and a couple K signs over top of the road. So.
And then last question I had written down is for a pedestrian crossing, could that also have raised crosswalk with the pedestrian island in the middle? Or are those 2 pieces of infrastructure mutually exclusive?
Okay, so you're asking, can you do the raised crosswalk with the refuge island? So a normal refuge island would have curb and gutter to act as a island of refuge. The raised crosswalk, so you're on the crosswalk, you don't ramp down to the roadway, you stay at top of curb level, and then you cross parallel. I have not seen a combined island with raised crosswalk. Just trying to envision this, on the effectiveness and a curb in the middle of the raised. Not seen them combined.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, several actually, but so can you summarize again the recommendation regarding any type of raised crosswalk and why you recommend it or don't recommend it? Just
Sure. Yeah, initially it wasn't a part of our, Monday neighborhood meeting recommendations, but upon hearing the neighborhood discussion Monday night, and upon doing some more research, yesterday and today for 25-mile-an-hour Harrison roadway. If we have time, and it seems like we have time, we don't have to, rush into something, yesterday. We are leaning towards recommending the raised crosswalk at the Glen Karen location. So initially, the only issue, and I don't know that I mentioned it during my presentation, the only issue with the raised crosswalk is it's gonna kind of be noisy, especially for trucks going over it. You're gonna hear the bump, 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 bump. Especially empty trucks they're gonna be noisy. So like I said, there's trade-offs, there's pros and cons with everything. That's actually a con of the raised crosswalk. A pro is it's gonna slow people down. The con is it's gonna be a little noisy.
Right. What, can you elaborate on that? The time thing, it's not recommended right now, but because of the meeting that you had on Monday, now you're leaning towards it. So what does that mean in terms of this report? And how council gets a recommendation or not? I'm not totally clear about that.
So I think the report that is in your packet, we prepared Monday before the neighborhood meeting. And I think we're going to council in December.
December now, yeah, it was gonna be November 18th. Now it's gonna be in December.
So now we've got time to continue the research and look at the data and, verify that that should be included, should or shouldn't. And like I said, I think based on what we've looked at the last 2 days, that we're more in alignment with it. Now, the other thing that we do want to do is we do want to get feedback from the police department and the fire department, emergency services, and make sure that, they're comfortable with that treatment as well. I know the city has reached out and the city as of tonight hasn't communicated with PDFD.
So this is just, as far as I know, I've kind of researched this as a layman in terms of raised crosswalks and the issue with emergency responders. Apparently there's a whole bunch of engineering solutions that make these very workable and address the concerns of police and fire departments, as well as the drainage issues. I don't know, are you aware of those or?
Oh, yeah, like I said, drainage is an easy thing. It's a couple more catch basins and it's a little bit of storm sewer to make sure that's accomplishable. And yeah, like I think I said earlier, we'd want to design it so, you're not creating a unmaneuverable bump. It's not a speed bump. It's not a speed table. It's a raised crosswalk. So we would want to design it for a 25-mile-an-hour roadway and make sure we have the right height, the right ramp, the right length, and all that good stuff. But again, it's an engineering feature that can be satisfied.
So you don't see any unsurmountable obstacles to having that safety feature there?
No.
Okay. The only other question I had is you had shown us a complex graph that with a little blue diamond that said because of that, those variables, we would recommend the RRFB versus what I assume is a more elaborate and attention-getting hawk signal. Is that, do I understand the difference between the two more correctly?
Yeah, and Stephen put the graph back up on. So I kind of went a little fast on this during the presentation. The bottom axis, horizontal axis, is vehicles per hour, both directions. So Harrison Road during the peak hour is a little bit less than 750 cars in an hour. Vertical axis is pedestrians. So during our count, we counted close to 100 pedestrians at the crossing. So that data point's actually going to raise up just a little bit in our final report, but it's still not changing location between, colored lines. So the gray line, and it's hard to see what's gray versus what's black, but there's a gray line that makes an L. Thank you, Stephen. That is the bottom threshold line for an RRFB. The black line that makes a 30-degree angle and then horizontal right there, that is the upper line for an RRFB. So if you fall between the gray and the black, you qualify for an RRFB, and this obviously does. The colored lines, those represent the hawk scenario. So on the right, the legend, blue is for 100-foot crossing, and Harrison Road is 22 feet. It's only 2 11-foot lanes, so it's pretty short crossing. So we don't worry about the 100-foot. green is 72 feet, yellow is 50 feet, and red is 34 feet. So we don't have anything less than 34 feet. So, looking at the 34-foot red line for guidance, you can see where we fall short of that. In order to qualify for a hawk, your data point has to fall above that. So
Okay.
qualifies for the RFB, not the hawk.
So it's like a little decision-making tool that would tell you this qualifies for a hawk or RFB, right?
Yep,
According
it's
to-
the data.
Yeah, the data, but who interprets the data? Is this a law or is this just a standard or?
This is coming from the MDOT publication titled MDOT Guidance for Installation of Pedestrian Crossings on Michigan State Trunk Line Highways. And yes, Harrison Road is not a state highway. It's a city major street. There's not a publication by MDOT or Federal Highway or AASHTO dealing with major streets. It's, Michigan, it's trunk line. So this is the guidance we have to use. This is the publication we have to use.
So I understand, so the guidance could be powerful coming from MDOT, but it's not really a requirement that you can't have a hawk signal there, right?
Correct.
So you could have one if you really wanted to.
You could, it doesn't, qualify for the guidance.
By law or by some arbitrary standard?
It's not a law. It's just, engineering documentation, engineering guidance. So yes, the city could elect to install a hawk.
I see. Okay. So that's again, national, I don't want to belabor the point too much. National engineering guidance, Michigan or
Michigan.
Michigan, okay, so it could be different in other states. The same situation might say, oh, we maybe do want a more elaborate hawk signal here, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Couple. Going back to, thank you, like everyone, for all the work that you've done for this. The presentation is great. I love all the recommendations. Yeah, thanks for all the work that's been put into this. Going back to the site distance that you mentioned, 496 feet from the top of the hill, more than double the requirement. Could you speak to whether or not you think that's, and like not to like, I don't know, put you up against coals or anything, but like if considering if it was a like loaded dump truck coming down the hill going, 5 miles over the speed limit, would that still seem sufficient?
So site distance comes from AASHTO. This is federal. AASHTO is American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. Site distance is, like I mentioned, 3.5 foot height of eye, 3.5 foot height of object. The distances are based on wet roadways, not dry roadways. So that's a good thing because we do know that stopping on a wet roadway is harder than stopping on a dry roadway. So that is in the consideration. Now, trucks, if you're driving a truck, you're higher than 3.5 foot height of eye. So you can actually see farther than you are if you're in a passenger car, or you're lower than the 3.5 foot height of eye. So the theory from AASHTO is that the trucks can see farther. They can see something farther in advance. So yes, trucks are heavier. Yes, it takes trucks longer to stop, slow down, but their higher height of eye in AASHTO's eyes offsets their weight. Did I fully answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel super comfortable, but that answers the question. Let's see. Yeah, thanks for talking about the Hawk versus RFB. Yeah, really good to know that the overhead crosswalk signs could be reused. Just wanted to, well, no, I'll skip that because I think we've talked about it enough. Let's see, I had a couple other here's. Oh yeah, the noise pollution from the raised crosswalk. I was thinking of the cost benefit of that, having it be right next to school. Wondering, just thinking like if I was in class at that school and if there's a truck going over it making that noise, how distracting that would be. But in my mind, I think that the benefit trade-off from that would outweigh it. The safety coming from the raised crosswalk would outweigh the noise. And I think that, you know, overall, everything that we can do to make it safer, we should be doing. And and there's some roads, streets around the world, maybe not around here, that are dedicated to schools and are closed off to cars entirely. And I'd be open to that too, but I know that that's not gonna fly. So I think the best we can do is try to make the road annoying enough for drivers that they don't want to take it at all, especially for large trucks. And I think that a lot of these recommendations will move us in that direction. And I think that it seems like we're open to the possibility of implementing a lot of this and reviewing it and seeing what else needs to be done. But and like for all these things that we're doing here, I think that they're really good here for safety measures, but I'm also thinking of all of these being implemented as to kind of dip our toes in the water of, oh, well, we can do, you know, a hawk here or, you know, a raised crosswalk. It's not the end of the world. This makes sense. Let's do it other places. We're familiar with it now. Let's make this standard practice. So I think that it can be, you know, a twofold win, that it will go a long way to make this a safe road, safe crossing, and then allow us to have more tools in our toolbox to make other places in the city safe. To, you know, change the culture of making a place for pedestrians and a place for safety. Yeah, wondering about the truck restrictions. It seems like I would want to ask law enforcement about what they think would be useful for them in terms of enforcement. It seems like it would be difficult for them to know what a class is. So, but I'd need to ask them about that. But looking at the diagram that we saw, even like class 6, I think was cement truck listed in there, which that doesn't seem like it should be going next to an elementary school. But also, if somebody has, say, a 3-axle moving truck that they, just rented for the day to move into their home or out or something, it seems like those two, in terms of the class distinction and even in terms of the axles and maybe even weight, could be, equatable. But it seems like one should be prohibited and the other shouldn't. So it seems like there may be, I don't know, more thought that needs to go into that to figure out what is the right way to restrict it, both in terms of restricting the right things and also making it enforceable for the people that need to enforce it. Yeah, please. Yeah, that wasn't really a question. I'm just rambling now.
Right. And like Ron kind of pointed out a little bit ago about, holistically, how do you move goods and services through town? And yes, this is a school zone. Yes, this is a neighborhood, but it's a major street. What are your other north-south major streets? Obviously Abbott, Hagedorn, but where are the trucks, like Ron said, where are the trucks coming from? Where are they going? Do they need to be on Harrison here, or is there somewhere else they can go? So.
Any other questions for the, yeah, go ahead, Will.
I guess this question is more of just kind of a final clarification. So you would still just kind of in whatever capacity you have, say that a potential truck prohibition for class 7 and potentially even class 6 is like still kind of on the table. It's not totally not recommended.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the consultant?
Yeah, here.
Hopefully this is quick. Can raised crosswalks be installed on a temporary basis? Is there a one of those plastic one style, like the temporary speed bumps, right?
Question. Not seen any. I haven't found any in research yet. So I'm not going to say no, but I don't know yet.
It was just a thought. Thank you.
If I could interject, actually, as a layman, again, not an engineer, I've done research and I believe they do exist, but I'm not the engineer, but I think I have seen them. You can buy them or order them.
Yeah, we have all kinds of solutions for all kinds of problems. So it would seem like there would be something strong enough to be put in place.
Yeah, and I can add some clarity on that as well. We've been researching temporary traffic calming measures, and that's our intent is this winter to purchase some items that we can put out. So try some of these things more aimed towards local streets. We haven't, there's temporary, I think Lansing put in temporary speed tables, I think on Clemens there. They've since pulled them out, whether there's one ADA compliant for crosswalk. I don't know. We'd have to look into that, but that is something we're actually looking at just for this type of case, and just in the interest of providing an update. The two big things about the raised crosswalk that we've heard is noise and public safety. And I did get an email back from our fire chief, and he's not concerned. He thinks they can navigate it. It will slow down emergency services a little bit, but minimal amount. So he has weighed in on that and isn't concerned. So it's really the noise piece, and I'm more concerned about the residential side because they're going to be hearing it all night long. So we're also on the hunt for a community that, although they're allowed by guidance, we're trying to track down somebody who's done it successfully so we can get some feedback and find out if the noise thing is something they're concerned about, or is it actually a proven thing. Lansing doesn't put them in for that reason. For noise and emergency services, I've reached out to Lansing. We're going to reach out to other communities that are delay from this being pushed to the December meeting. Buys us some time to do that research so that we can come back and say, yes or no, we've talked to communities and this is a concern or not a concern. And we can hopefully put that concern to rest.
And the noise issue might be better directed for city council as well.
We will certainly provide that
because
information.
obviously I do think whatever decision we make, I do think obviously city council have final approval. And I know residents, besides noise from a raised crosswalk potentially, have always been concerned about mufflers and other noise pollution from cars. So obviously, like city council is well aware of noise issues with cars.
We have other raised crosswalks. Are the White Hills crosswalks not good examples?
Those are at stop signs, so that they're not getting
Okay.
speed over. Those raised crosswalks are at stop signs, so people aren't stopping at them all the time. They're going slow.
Okay.
So another thing I wanted to point out is we have reached out to PD to talk about the enforceability. The TCO that got put into place is temporary for 90 days. So we could do some of this research without a motor carrier officer. So we have reached out to find out how to implement that on a permanent basis when we bring the resolution to council so that they can enforce it, the tools that they have. So we have reached out, waiting for their feedback. So we'll have that as well.
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment that again, this is amateur research, but I think it seems like the ones like at MSU and others, they're not like dramatic speed bumps where you do hear the clunk, right? So it seems like they could be engineered in a very gentle way, sinusoidal shape to kind of allow for a rollover that would control and calm traffic and diminish the amount of noise. I mean, again, I'm not the engineer, but it seems like those exist. And I mean, at MSU, I don't stand by the raised crosswalks on Farm Lane and pay attention to how much noise they make, but I have never noticed. No, I've seen buses go over them and I just don't notice a lot of noise. I mean, the noise that I hear, like on that stretch of Harrison, not that they would want more noise if it is an issue, is the noise from this traffic on Saginaw, especially the cars without mufflers, but I don't think, I just kind of myself see this as a red herring, this idea that the raised crosswalks, we should really worry about it because the noise is such an issue compared to the safety benefits they bring to the table. So I think it's, again, not an objective view, but I think there is probably, if you did research, guidance that would show you how to install one in a neighborhood where that is a concern. Again, I think the way they're designed in White Hills, albeit, yes, there are stop signs there, so that helps. But I think even without the stop signs, I think I walk there almost every day and I see they're designed so that, in fact, I've seen cars run the stop signs and I don't hear any noise. I see them running the stop sign over the raised crosswalk, but it doesn't seem to be a huge issue with the noise. But again, since I don't live there.
No, and I appreciate that, Quan. I know just to keep, we have MDOT here to speak as well, and just to kind of keep things moving. Thank you for coming and presenting the proposal. You did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And then I'll give it to, Nathan.
So I'd like to kind of take a stab at this and move us forward. So I'm going to bring a motion. I move to recommend to City Council the adoption of the Spicer Consulting recommendations for the Harrison Road Safety Enhancement at Glencairn Elementary with the following stipulations. One, both standard recommendations and enhanced recommendations are adopted. Two, the restriction of trucks be set to not allow Class 7 or higher. Number three, the inclusion of a pedestrian island is changed to a raised pedestrian crossing. And four, the enhanced overhead signage is built in such a way to ensure if the city wants to upgrade to a hawk crossing in the future, that infrastructure is constructed in such a way to minimize future costs.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Vice Chair Warner, seconded by Noah Vandergallion. Discussion.
Just a clarification, is the raised crosswalk instead of the island or, okay, so not additional?
Well, their recommendation, I believe, was to have the pedestrian island. I'm proposing replacing the pedestrian island with a raised crossing. I could be misinterpreting
Yeah,
this.
so they never recommended a pedestrian island as a final recommendation. It was an
Okay.
option.
Okay.
To go back to the original proposal. So what we're saying in the motion is that we are proposing raised crosswalk.
So, and I want to make my first stipulation is both this, and I use standard recommendations and enhanced recommendations. So everything on that first page, and then where it says additional considerations, install pedestrian refuge and install warning beacon in advance of the crossing. I'm saying we do adopt those. However, we replace pedestrian refuge with raised crosswalk.
Thank you. And just as a comment, I think that's probably the right way to go here. I think the island has a lot more questions because of the fact it would basically make cars go closer to the house and the school by a few feet.
And like I mentioned, we've never recommended a raised crosswalk, but this is a very unique circumstance and it could physically happen. You know, the feasibility is there, so I'm comfortable with a raised crosswalk, especially since it's coming from the Monday meeting with neighbors and residents that are advocating for it. And then I also want to speak that I do think the question that Noah brought up about the truck limit, I do think that's important too, that it would capture more trucks going on Harrison Road. So I do think that is a good thing that is in the motion. So any other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I'll also second my support for the raised crosswalk. For this current motion, it's recommending trucks to be restricted by class, correct?
Yeah, class 7.
Yes.
So 7 above will be prohibited on
Right.
Harrison Road.
Right. My only concern with that is I would want input from law enforcement on whether or not that is feasible for them.
And I think the motion, the way it's done is obviously this would go to city council, and I would imagine that the city attorney and city council members would ask the city manager for its input on the feasibility of actually banning, trucks at class 7. I think for the purview of our commission, I don't think we need that specific information to make our motion. Unless you can add anything.
Yeah,
Stephen.
I actually had a question for maybe Ron. Because we have 90 days that temporary TCO is in effect. We have a little bit more research. Would it be something that we could come back on in December and talk about that weight, the truck? Or is that something?
Whether it's 7 or 8, how they want to grab it.
Okay. It's just a thought, there could be some more time for that. The temporary TCO will remain in effect for 90 days. But I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Well, I think it's a good question, Evan.
Yeah.
And I hopefully it would be debated at city council. Any other discussion before vote? Yes.
I don't know if it's poor manners to discuss your own motion, but
You can.
I do want to take a moment to specifically address the truck restriction. It seems unusual that this body made a recommendation to restrict trucks, and what came back to us is a restriction that doesn't really restrict any trucks. And even just showing pictures on the screen, there's no definition of what I think I agreed to a couple months ago that would allow class 7s to be going through that corridor. And so if there was additional questions about that, we've had months to have that brought to this group to say, hey, we want to go back and talk about this. So I echo the residents' concerns about that. That's really frustrating. And to having felt like we got to some place where we could have made some progress, and then to come back and see the traffic study, it feels like we drew a line someplace where it would be a completely ineffectual policy. That may not be the case, but in the future, when we do have these situations, I do hope the city reaches out to us, engages in dialogue so that we can address this before it gets to this point, because when we're stuck in this position, we clearly have residents who are very concerned about this, and we end up looking like people who have not cared, and that's clearly not what our intent has been. So I definitely feel undercut as a commission member, and I really am frustrated with that process. So
I'll just say, I wanted, the city really appreciates everything that the commission does, and the work that you guys put in obviously is very important, and especially as just residents. Just wanted to point out that we did receive counts for this project in September. So they were a little bit later. They were during the school year. It just kind of gave an accurate picture of the truck traffic, but understand the comments for sure.
Just to add to Vice Chair Warner's comments, I do agree, and that's kind of why I brought up the visual, like what does class 8 mean? Because when we actually voted on that, I had a different intention of what, no cut through, no trucks meant on Harrison. So I'm glad that there's clarification for us on that, because I do think that is a big concern on Harrison. So that's why I support the motion on hand with including class 7 on it. Any other discussion on the motion?
Would just like to have it be in the minutes of mentioning the consideration of hardwired radar signs and widening the sidewalk on the east side of Harrison as a consideration. If that needs to be amendment, I can motion for an amendment, but if it's enough just for it to be in the discussion, then
I think it's enough just for the discussion, Evan. I think his motion is pretty broad.
Yeah.
On the enhance improvements as well. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, the motion passes. Yeah. While Noah is filling up his water, yeah. We'll take a 2-minute break.
Okay, so before this one is. To be fair.
Like on Google Maps.
The one I.
Yes.
Google, because no one else.
Phone would be up there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. See.
Yeah, and it's very similar to
Concrete.
Hey, WLX. When they came over, I was like, oh, I gotta go. I want to be shared next year. That's 19. Yeah, the empty ones are back. So, yeah. Some things. Right on. It's just. That's the funny.
I'm still having issues after speaking.
It's hard. Technology is always this good. Waiting for, well. Ambitious. I don't think of that section. Yeah. Right. If there's not. I knew this.
Okay, in the interest of time, we're going to resume our meeting. Next up, we have 4.2, a discussion with MDOT related to shared traffic signals and East Lansing. I know there is one person would like to speak before you during public comment. So Brianna, if you want to come up, I'll give you 5 minutes to speak. It should be on. Is it on? Or is there a button?
Nice.
Look, this happens every time I do it. It's me. It's just me. I have some sort of electromagnetic thing. Okay. Sorry, it's the Angry Mom Show tonight. I apologize. I wasn't preparing this, but this is from a letter that was being prepared. I'm Brianna Egan, Chesterfield Hills resident. My neighborhood is up there on the screen. Thanks to Stephen. I really appreciate your support today, Stephen. So I live on Kensington Road and I'm going to just read from my notes so I don't mess this up. Thank you, MDOT, for coming and talking to us about the intersection upgrades. I appreciate it. This is going to go a little bit back into the history of how we got here, though. So the Kensington Crosswalk was established in the 1980s to provide safe access to Glencairn Elementary School with safety measures such as a 25 mile per hour speed limit, a traffic signal, and a legally designated school crossing coordinated by MDOT, ELPS, and the City of East Lansing. It even made it into LSJ, with the superintendent kind of railing against cars and speeding. So that's kind of our neighborhood identity, I guess, from the 80s. So over time, these protections were removed or became outdated. MDOT later raised the speed limit on Grand River from the west side of the city and on to 35 miles per hour through the school zone and reconfigured Kensington Road access for Michigan Avenue traffic, increasing traffic volume and turning it into a major cut-through route. These changes, combined with obsolete traffic and safety infrastructure, have created a dangerous school crossing. Now, to explain what I mean by the reconfiguration of Kensington Road, which you all have heard me talk about a million times, so I'm so sorry, but MDOT's here now. If you look at Michigan Avenue, there used to be 3 crossovers, double crossovers, one at Cowley, one off center from Highland, and one off center from Kensington Road. There were 2 ways. In 2018, 2019, there was efforts to make that one big long median and all the crossovers were eliminated. There was always going to be one over towards Kensington Road. But after a public notice meeting where I found out through FOIA records, some bicyclists said that they would like the pedestrian crossing to be wider on Michigan Avenue that's right offset from Kensington Road. They shifted the plans in 2019 to not have a Michigan left for eastbound traffic on Michigan Avenue, but to create a direct left turn onto Kensington. So that's how we ended up in the situation where we have now, where if you look at the map, I know it looks like there's a crossover there, but it's not. It's a pedestrian crossover from Frandor until we are the first left turn from Frandor on Michigan Avenue. So with Homer closed down, with 127 traffic being the way that it is, with Harrison traffic being the way it is, you can guess where all that traffic was going down. It took me forever to figure out that that's what happened. I had to look back. There's no public records from the public notice meeting that MDOT held in 2019 that have these plans on them. I moved there in 2018, and so I watched it all go down in our neighborhood. There isn't a single neighbor there that knew that that crossover was changing to direct traffic up bars. Now, keep in mind, you can't make a left turn at Harrison either, going eastbound on there. That's a Michigan left. That was changed in 2016. Beale Road and Kensington Road are the only left turns for eastbound Michigan traffic. So if there's any backup, that's what happens. Well, everybody's figured it out over the years. And now that is the preferred route for GPS apps to take northbound traffic, no matter where you're going, north of Grand River to Coolidge Road, to the school, to Harrison, it takes you up our street. Our street has not a single stop sign. Also, if you look at the top, the north part of Kensington Road, and I don't know if you can see there on the map, but I don't know if we can zoom in, but if you follow Kensington Road up to that yellow line, which is Grand River, that's our school crossing. And I don't mean just any school, that's an elementary school crossing. That's the elementary school crossing for the entire population of students going to that elementary school south of Grand River. Do you see all those buildings to the left? Those like condensed buildings? Those are all apartment buildings. These are disjointed choices that were made without public input, without pulling in the school to see what it was going to do to the school crossing. So now we went from, before MDOT made this change, it was about 300 cars both ways up Kensington, and then Cowley and Highland also had equal traffic, to now there are days where we have 600 cars going northbound, just northbound on our street through our school zone for elementary school kids. None of the lights worked the way that none of the buttons worked the way that they were supposed to. That was challenged. So I videotaped myself trying to press it, then posted it. And then what do you know? It got fixed. Oh crap. ELPD stepped in and fixed it. So my ask is, one, I know we're going to talk about the upgrades of the intersection, which should have been done a very, very long time ago. It does not look like a school crossing, and it should not have been in 2029. But also we need to look at what they did at the crossover on Michigan Avenue, because without fixing that, our street is just going to become a complete throughway. We need the intersection. We need it to be safer. It's nowhere near MMUTCD guidelines for a school crossing, but you have to look at the whole big picture so we're not back here again next year. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any other public comments on 4.2? Okay, at this time I have representatives from MDOT. Thank you for staying with us to discuss your schedule on signal upgrades throughout East Lansing, and then having a discussion on the specific concerns on Grand River, Kensington, Harrison and Grand River, and then of course Harrison and Saginaw. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm Melissa Longworth. I'm the operations engineer at MDOT at the Lansing Transportation Service Center. And I brought Zach Ruddick, he's our traffic and safety engineer, as well as Nicole Villarreal. She's our assistant operations engineer. So together we work on the intersections that we share with the city of East Lansing. So Stephen and Ron invited us here today to discuss the signal projects we have in the area, as well as commonly discussed intersections, because we meet monthly and we talk about these intersections. Although MDOT has the responsibility to maintain and operate signalized intersections that are on MDOT routes, even if they share it with the city, we partner together, we talk about them, we have reoccurring meetings, we use the same service provider that they use to maintain their signals. So so again, it's a partnering effort, even though MDOT is tasked with the responsibility of funding the maintenance and repairs of these signals. So there was two specific things related to signals that Stephen asked us to talk about, and it was our modernization schedules, so what we have coming in the area in East Lansing, as well as signal projects, as well as specific intersections. Yeah, I could tell. Okay. All right. Is that better? Okay. Okay, so we'll start by talking about the signal modernization process. So MDOT has a process where it's called our call for projects for our signals. And it's similar to what we do for many of our road projects and things like that. We do this call for projects, and it's a competitive template where we try to get money to upgrade our signals. And just like the roads that are condition based, where it's driven by the worst condition roads, get the projects, it's similar for signals. So we look at our signals as a whole across the state, and it's largely based on condition and the age of the equipment out there. And it's a 5-year call, and we submit to have projects competitively competing against other projects across the state to have our signals upgraded. And we're fortunate in the East Lansing area to have 2 very big signal modernization projects coming in the next 5 years. So the first big one that we're going to see is going to occur on Grand River Avenue, and there are 7 locations. It is ranging from Hillcrest Road all the way over to Stoddard. So that's 7 locations. The locations are Grand River and Hillcrest, Grand River in Michigan, Grand River in Abbott, Grand River in Mack Avenue, Grand River in Division, Grand River in Collingwood / Farm Lane, as well as Grand River and Stoddard. So those 7 locations will be upgraded in 2028. We're currently going through the design process with an as-needed design consultant. We've really, at this point, just kicked things off. We've, said, what kind of equipment upgrades do we need here? What things can we address while we're out there and things like that. So that is just kicking off, and we'll have plenty of plan review meetings and field review meetings where we go out and we make sure that we're bringing the right equipment to these signals in 2028 construction year. The next big project we have coming is in 2029. We have 8 signals on Saginaw and Grand River. The 8 signals are, so it's like Saginaw and M43, I-69BL and M43. Then we have M43 in Coolidge, M43 at Kensington, I-69BL at Coolidge, I-69BL at Harrison, I-69BL at Abbott, as well as the crossover just east of Hagedorn on I-69BL and I-69BL at Park Lake. So those are those 8 signals. And again, same idea. That one's probably even a year behind the rest of the schedule, where, we've been talking about the scope of those signals, but we haven't even kicked off the scope with the design consultants yet. We just develop our wish list and things that, are what we talk about at these signals and things like that. So we would be then moving into the design phase where we can incorporate these enhancements to these signals. Yeah, the average age of a modernized signal is about 30+ years. So if your equipment is not over 30+ years, you're probably not going to make it into the call for projects, because again, we're looking and we're competing against all the signals across the state of Michigan.
When you're looking for these things that have been updated along Grand River and Saginaw, are you also going to update the pedestrian signals too?
Yes,
as well. Not just the
absolutely.
light?
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be upgrading the pedestrian signals, all the ramps associated within there, all the equipment, all the poles. The poles are really actually a big one that we have. We like to modernize our poles because those can have issues as well. So we look at the age of our poles and things like that as well.
So I have a follow-up question. Pedestrian signals you asked about. So is there any consideration of, have you done work with leading pedestrian interval signals in streets where, like Grand River and Saginaw, where it runs through densely populated urban areas with lots of pedestrians and high speed traffic, like Saginaw, where the speed was raised despite East Lansing's objections to 45. So those are very useful from what I understand, the literature says. They work really well, like in Ann Arbor. And I think the East Lansing non-motorized plan that was recently approved for 2025 specifically recommended LPIs on Grand River. There's 3 intersections on Grand River that run through downtown East Lansing that have the most incidents of cars hitting pedestrians. And that would certainly not be the main solution. We solve everything, but it would help a lot. I mean, I cross those regularly and I see how LPIs would really help. So can you explain the process for your staff towards LPIs and the process that would perhaps lead to or not lead to LPIs being implemented in Grand River, for example, in East Lansing?
Absolutely, yeah. And Stephen has brought some of the ones that you guys are interested in to our attention, as well as I know they're working on a pilot to explore them with their city signals. So we've been talking about that on a recurring basis. MDOT itself has experience with LPIs. As you said, we have, signals in Ann Arbor area and things like that. And we're fortunate enough that our signals engineer, who's not here today, works with the signals in Ann Arbor as well. So we do have experience with LPIs. Now, our Lansing TSC area being Eaton, Ingham, and Clinton County, we do not have any LPIs quite yet. However, we have proposed LPIs coming on Cedar and Larch in the Cesar Chavez area. We have a signal modernization project that just got awarded and it will be constructed next year. So we are proposing LPIs at least 2 locations. So we're going to be exploring it. We're going to be reviewing that information to see how well that works, as well as comparing our notes against what Steven's experience is with his pilot. And then the 3 intersections that were brought to our attention that were of interest to LPIs are noted, and 2 of them are scheduled for modernization. So often, I think it was Abbott and M43, as well as Collingwood/Farming Hills and M43. So we would make sure that it has the right equipment if that is something that we would pursue in the future.
Based on my discussions with the same signals engineer, we're open to them, especially where they make most sense. We're not outwardly saying no, we're opposed to them, just cautiously exploring.
All right.
Case by case basis, and there's different timing plans that we can implement to help pedestrians. So we want to make sure we're putting the right timing plans for pedestrians that fit that location.
And not to speak negatively of them, but we had a peer that was trying it at a location at a T intersection with a lot of left turn movements. And they found that the LPI actually caused more harm than good because it put them, 7 seconds ahead of everyone else. And all of a sudden that's where the left turner was. And so they felt that the LPI negatively impacted the intersections, and they went with an all pedestrian phase instead, which means that, they would not have they would have their own basically phase for the pedestrian to cross. So it's a case by case basis, like they said.
Yeah,
So
by pedestrian, you mean all the traffic stops and only pedestrians? So I think in Tokyo, they have some that are like that.
right. Just
All
like,
the cars are-
east-west
Yep,
goes,
exactly.
north-south goes, then PEDS go. That is what an
Okay.
all pedestrian phase
Yeah, the
is.
only follow-up question is, do you systematically look at the statistics of pedestrians and cyclists who are hit when making these decisions? And are you aware of what a problem it is on Grand River?
We always look at the crash
Okay.
data every time we're looking at a request for no right turn on red restriction or increased
Right.
timing, decreased
Okay.
timing. Crash data is the first thing that we
So
would
you're
look
aware
at.
that those 3 intersections, I think Collingwood and Grand River, Abbott and Grand River, I think there's one more, are highly
Yeah.
problematic in terms of the density. Like if you did a heat map, that would be where bright red in terms of
Right.
pedestrians getting hurt, right?
Yeah, we do look at that
Okay.
pedestrian
All right.
data.
Yeah, to add to that, with the signal modernization process, since that's the topic we're talking so heavily about right now, is we're trying to take a very holistic approach. Upgrading, adding in LPIs if they make sense, or if it is something we can accommodate. But also, we look at, traffic volumes, and the crash patterns, things like that at the intersection. See, is there things we can implement at the same time? So we're already rebuilding it to best accommodate that, or changes in traffic pattern. Because I'm sure, as you guys all know, traffic changes in 30 years.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the process because it's a process that affects the lives of East Lansing residents and over which we don't really have a lot of say. I know you talk to Steven and Public Works, but it seems like a black box to me. So I'm just trying to understand better how you all work. Thanks. Thank you.
And we just remembered, actually, we are implementing one LPI before that one I talked about at Cesar Chavez, at Morgan Lane and Michigan Avenue. So right coming into almost city of East Lansing, not quite, right? We just inherited that signal in a jurisdictional transfer, and we have been reviewing the timing plans, and we're going to be doing a 6-second LPI at that intersection.
Thank you for the explanation.
So that was our 2 big modernization projects coming in the area. Next, we wanted to just highlight a couple other projects we have coming that are more pop-up type projects and things like that. So if you're not on schedule for a modernization, occasionally we can do what's called a transportation work authorization, where we try to do a little design in-house and be able to install it a little bit quicker than a 5-year schedule. It's still on like a 3-year schedule, but one thing that we have in the works right now is we're going to be adding pedestrian signals at the crossing at Grand River, and I always say People's Church because it's right by the People's Church, but it's right where Michigan and Grand River come together. Currently, one of the crossings is unsignalized, while the other crossing across the Michigan portion is signalized, so we'll be adding a pedestrian signal to the northern half of that. The Grand River section, thank you. And that is currently in the queue for design. We don't have a construction date yet. Again, it's a 3-year process as well, but it is in the queue for design. One other project to note that's been going on throughout the Lansing and East Lansing areas, we've installed what we call the central system integration, and it's really fancy new software that really lets us coordinate our signals better. It allows us to remote in access our signals and see what's happening to our signals around the area, and that has just been installed in almost all the signals in East Lansing. It sounds like we just have Michigan Avenue to finish up the work there. And we find it's a really great tool. In fact, I think you had called about one intersection and then they had just installed the central system. We were able to see that, no, the detection's working. And we went out there and, you know, we're able to look at it a little bit closer and quickly found the issue and we're able to correct it after Stephen brought it to our attention. So that was pretty exciting that we have this new software. It's, you know, it talks really well, it coordinates well, enhances operations, and allows our electricians to remote into the signal and see what's going on quicker. So pretty exciting. From there, again, Stephen asked us to talk about a couple specific intersections, so we can go into those intersections as well that we talk a lot about in our reoccurring calls. The first being Grand River and Kensington. We did talk about how that is scheduled for modernization in 2029. It's been on the modernization schedule, you know, a 5-year call. So it's been on the schedule for a while. We're about to kick off design with the designers, but we have heard some input. And so we've made some enhancements along the way through maintenance and working with the city and the Lansing Board of Water and Light, who maintains our signals. We reviewed the signal timing for the pedestrian crossing times, and we went out and installed longer crossing times. We've received more feedback, and we went out and we observed the crossing guard operations, and then we extended it even longer than typical crossing times that we usually have at our signals, but just do the operations and crossing 2 legs of an intersection all at once, we were able to incorporate even longer crossing times than typical. As well as we worked with the Lansing Board of Water and Light to install enhanced signal pedestrian heads. Basically, they're countdown pedestrian heads. So you see them all over East Lansing where they, you know, instead of just saying don't walk, it'll count down 12, 11, 10, you know, how many seconds you have left for the crossing. So we were able to just install those via maintenance, upgrade it with the board, and they were able to install those right towards the beginning of the school season. That one, again, is scheduled for modernization in 2029, and it will at that time be upgraded to a full signal, meaning that you will also have red and green on Kensington. So right now, you know, it only flashes red towards Kensington as like a stop. It'll be, the new standard is to have a full signal in that type of situation. We didn't used to signalize side streets in pedestrian signals. Like Stoddard is the same way. Stoddard flashes red as a stop, just due to the different standards, but it'll be upgraded to a full signal.
Yeah, it definitely shift over the years with all transportation organizations away from the fear of adding any amount of delay to increasing safety, even if it's only in a small amount, by just signalizing the whole thing.
The next intersection that we often talk about would be both Harrison and Grand River and Harrison and Saginaw. And so what we're talking about here often is, you know, those both have existing signals. The request comes for left turn phasing for the northbound and southbound movements. And when we start to talk about changing our signal phasing and changing our timing and things like that, MDOT takes a stance where we're following our guidance, and our guidance is, you know, I think it was quoted earlier for the Hawk. It stems often from federal guidance as well, and we're held pretty firmly to our guidance. We typically follow our guidance because we're aiming for consistency around the state, you know, not just this area. And So we're trying to have that consistency around the state, and then we follow these different thresholds. So when it comes to a left turn phasing study, there's a couple key components that they look at. You know, the intersection is brought to our attention. Then the first thing we do is we go and we collect data counts. You know, we're looking at the volumes and the turning movements and what's happening out at the intersection. They look at a gap analysis to see how many gaps are available throughout the entire day, 8-hour counts, 12-hour counts. They're looking at the delays experienced on the main line and the side streets. And then we're looking at the crash history. We always look at the crash history. Are there left turn crashes that are resulting at this intersection? And so looking at all those different factors that we come to a recommendation from our signals unit on whether or not we should be installing left turn phasing at these signals. We're looking at the overall signal operations and how the area is impacted. So for Grand River and Harrison, that one has been requested as an evaluation. The evaluation has been underway for years, and it kind of was, high interest, maybe low interest, but it's come up again. So we've kept it on the table under evaluation. It was likely not meeting our thresholds. However, we're taking a closer look at it. We understand that there are some skews and sight distance issues, and although it's not resulting in a crash pattern that has collect the box to say that it has a correctable left turn crash pattern, we know that there's things as near misses and things like that. So that's why we go out and we observe these things. So we're looking at that one closer. It doesn't have a final determination yet at this time. If we were able to install left turn phasing, it would likely need an upgrade to the signal where we would have to put it into the modernization schedule. Which is in the modernization. No, wait, is Grand River? No, that one actually
Grand River is not.
is not. That's the one that's out. Crisscross, so hard.
Saginaw and Harrison.
Yeah. So the other one that we talk about quite frankly is Saginaw and Harrison for left turn phasing, again, for the northbound and southbound movements. And we evaluated against all those other things that I already talked about. It was closely evaluated in 2022 with the counts and looking at the thresholds, the field reviews. And at that time, it was found that it did not meet our thresholds for left turn phasing. So, a final memo came out. We've shared it with the group and then with the city before. We do know that we have this modernization coming in 2029. And so we're going to reevaluate it at that time. We're going to say, have things changed? If we're changing our movements, if we're changing our pedestrians, if there's anything different, we're going to reevaluate it. So to see if there's anything that then could change the recommendations from the signals unit. So.
Studied that was going to be a denial for the same reasons with volumes. But I believe the memo wasn't finalized at the time, but I'm not sure to be correct.
It was not, and we chose not to finalize it because new things came up, and that's
What happened?
The last intersection we were asked to speak about was Saginaw and Alton, which is not a signalized intersection, but it's one that has been identified and brought to our attention by the city, as well as it's been on a list of, having a high crash left turn pattern. And we're looking at evaluating this. We've requested counts I think that counts were actually taken. So now we're just waiting to receive the counts back from our central office so that we can model it, look at the volumes, and come up with different scenarios that we think could help this crash pattern. It'll be looking at what if we eliminate the left turn movement? What if, if we eliminate the left turn movement, how many right turns? Do we need one right turn? Do we need two right turns? If we don't eliminate the left turn warrant, does it warrant a full signal? So it'll be looking at all those different alternatives to see what is the recommendation that we have. We'll work through it with the city to see, are they on board with what we think is going to be the best option here? And then we would partner together to see if we can develop a project and get funding. So.
For this one in particular, I would urge you, because you have the park that's usually busy during spring and fall, and then the church and the school with St. Thomas active, for the most part all year with mass and whatnot. It's a very unique intersection.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people use Alton to park at the East Lansing High School on Michigan State football games, and they walk. So it's a unique, lot of influx of people coming in and out on Alton, just with the mass, the public park, and then its closeness to East Lansing High School with the parking opportunities for the football season. So just kind of know there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and it's hard to grasp that at one moment sometimes. So it's good to hear those different alternatives that you might not see every day. So.
Yeah, I would echo that there's all those factors that lead to huge lines at periods of the day. I walk everywhere, so past Patriarch Park. So sometimes I'm shocked, like there's this huge lines of cars waiting to make that left turn. And unfortunately, again, I know it was not your decision, you all, to make Saginaw into a 45 mile an hour, which effectively means 55 to 60 miles an hour is when I'm doing 45 or 50, I still regularly get passed by cars doing they must be doing 55 or 60 miles an hour on Saginaw. So you have that traffic at that speed, then you have cars very impatient because the line forms. And you know how it is when it's your turn and then you see 12 cars behind you. You feel compelled to
Yeah.
want to make that left turn really quickly. And I don't know what the crash pattern is there. I assume it's pretty bad.
So the crash pattern at this intersection and kind of why we wanted to evaluate alternatives to just, throwing a traffic signal out there because the layout of everything, traffic signal might not be the easiest to position at that intersection.
I see.
There are, I want to say no injury crashes, no serious injury crashes. And this is a unique intersection. I've done a lot of crash analysis over the last few years in our system. And at this location, almost all, I'd say like 90% of the crashes are that northbound left associated with making that left out of the driveway. There are almost no crashes otherwise. So that's,
interesting.
again, it's not often we have an intersection where there's one specific movement that if we were to somehow correct it, that would solve the majority of the crashes.
Fascinating. Thank you.
That's what we had prepared for the signals discussion. We didn't necessarily come with other things. I have heard a lot of other topics tonight. I don't know if you want us to go into anything else
I
or.
think the most common thing, I know we're at 8, so we do our best to kind of move along, but I know since being on our Transportation Commission, speeding has always been a concern. And obviously, MDOT, being a state road with, Saginaw and Grand River, the city's limited to what we can and cannot do. We rely on your expertise and your guidance. So when it comes to just the speeding change from 35 to 45 on Saginaw, and then obviously with Grand River being 25 to 35 now, I know we get a lot of residents who are fearful that eventually Saginaw might be 55. And so I guess you walk through how the threshold is for how you guys do your speeding on your state-owned roads.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do know we have inquiries into our office right now that are under review and they're preparing responses related to the topic. So that which should be coming out. As far as our process is we partner with the Michigan State Police to establish speed limits on state trunk line. And we strictly follow the law that says, we post speeds as the 85th percentile speed. And so that there's not a lot of deviance from that process. Again, we have our contact at Michigan State Police who we work together closely. So as far as frequently reviewing something in a formal review, we don't go out and do that because we do know that people are driving 55. So if we're going to do an 85th percentile speed study, the speed limit is likely going to go up instead of go down. So we don't actively say, can we get a new speed study? So that is not our process. We're not trying to increase speed around the areas. There are certain times where we get asked to do speed studies and we say, let's do an informal speed study first. Let's go out there with our radar gun and let's measure the data and let's see what it's looking like the 85th percentile speed is and the 50th percentile speed, because you can't go any lower than the 50th percentile speed. And that is often surprisingly 1 mile per hour lower than the 85th. It's not a large range when you look at the data in the way that we look at it with these. And so we often we'll do an informal one. If a local agency wants to pursue a formal speed study with Michigan State Police, we like to see them resolution in support that they will accept whatever the results are of that formal speed study, and what the Michigan State Police says that needs to be input. As well, we partner with the Michigan State Police, but they take the lead on the analysis part. So that's our process for a formal speed limit study.
Can I ask a final question? I'm just really curious since we have you here. I've wondered about it for years, but I forget what year the speed limit was raised on Saginaw. I don't know if you remember. It's probably before you came on board.
It was, yes.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious if you've done analysis of, and I know there's other variables that would affect the incidence of crashes, but my gut impression is that because of this raise in the speed limit, there are a lot more crashes. Is that something that's been studied, and is that really the case? And I know that bad driving and higher traffic volumes might also contribute, but do you know the extent to which after that speed limit was raised?
We're reviewing the documents that we have on hand right now
you don't
because
know.
it was so long ago. Our
see.
crash data system goes back 10 years currently. So for us to do a formal study and with the data we have available at hand is a little difficult due to the years and the time frame that we're looking at. But like I said, we're reviewing what we have on hand in files and things like that.
Say our crash data system, it's actually MSP's, Michigan Police Crash Data System, so there's no two separate databases.
Right.
We do get our information straight from them.
And city reports go there and all the police agencies all go to
So
one.
it's not MDOT.
Yeah.
We just have access to their database.
All right, I was just curious if there was data to confirm or disconfirm my gut feeling that there's just a lot more crashes on Saginaw after you all raised the speed limit, so. But anyway.
Just a quick thing that I want to mention. I think in our non-motorized transportation plan, there is look at reconfiguring the intersection of Abbott and M43, and I think that you mentioned that's one of the intersections you're looking at. Currently, there's a lot of, I see, just like when I'm down there, a lot of pedestrians crossing it, whether it's no sidewalk or crosswalk, just kind of running out and standing, in the median. And it's a dangerous, when cars are turning left, that's dangerous for pedestrians crossing. It seems like that's an area that if there is going to be any reconfiguration, which there definitely needs to be, it needs to be done in coordination with MDOT. So it seems like this is the conversation that needs to happen, but we're out of time. So I guess.
No. And I will add, we'll continue. This is a good discussion, Evan. I will say, to speak to what Evan's saying, because I was part of the non-motorized transportation plan, that the recommendation is changing I believe we have the lanes, we want the zebra crossings instead, or whatever we have, we want the opposite. So I think that's where there was a review that we need better markings for pedestrians to cross from Abbott on Saginaw.
And extra crosswalks, like
Yeah.
a new sidewalk through the
Yeah.
median.
So obviously, like when you guys are doing that, hopefully Stephen will help you review that. That was a lot of residents came to that. They want a better way for pedestrians because all the apartments down Abbott, people bike, people walk. There's just a lot of Abbott is a very powerful north and south road that links our downtown to a lot of residential areas north of the city. So I know that intersection in particular is a great concern.
Yes, we have looked at that one quite a bit, and are discussing enhancements to bring in the modernization as well.
Yeah, one thing we're considering is again, you can implement at the same time. One of the things we're looking to implement at that time is when you push the buttons for to get a pedestrian interval, it I believe this all function, our signals person isn't here, would lock out the permissive left turn phase to eliminate conflicts between permissive left turns and pedestrians, and that's something we're really excited to try and implement.
Right.
That is correct.
So it would only have the green arrow. It would not have the flashing yellow at the time when a pedestrian has actuated the button.
And then Vice Chair Warner.
I have kind of two quick questions. I want to go back to the question of speed limits for a moment. Is it the case that all state trunk lines are defined at that 85th and there are no exceptions to that?
I would say typically they are defined that way. And then with the new legislation, we have not had anything change since that new legislation where it added can go down to the 50th percentile. We haven't had any recent speed studies that would have been impacted by that legislation. Yeah, the freeways. Yeah.
I think my question is more about, is there an ability for a community to say, I know 85 is a particular level, but we are not comfortable with that. We prefer a lower limit. Are there any?
It's not
instances
based
of
on
that?
preference. It would be based on an engineering study where multiple factors are looked at with the Michigan State Police, whether it is multiple, is it the bike lanes, the pedestrians present, the other factors that would, So it would be an engineering study, but you would still not be allowed to go below the 50th percentile.
Okay.
Per the law.
Okay. And then second question, I know based on kind of my experience here with the commission that a lot of these evaluations take multiple years. So as you're obviously talking about 28 and 29, one of the challenges that we face is sometimes not getting information until we're far enough along in the process where we no longer have the ability to provide feedback or to express preferences. And so I guess my question is, when we think about those lighting studies that are going to happen along Grand River, many of those are intersections where we hear strong opinions from the community, and we would love an opportunity to ensure that whatever you're proposing is either shared, that we have the ability to voice preferences and to to appropriately object when there are things that don't meet the community standards. So can you speak just really briefly, and obviously I know it's crunch for time, but like timeframes on those things? If that is a 2028, when can we expect to see designs or, you know, impressions, ideas, napkin drawings, whatever it would be?
Yes, and so, I mean, we start talking about now, we have notes already that Stephen has told us, like, look at LPI here, and we look at, so definitely filter these comments and feedback through Stephen because we have that reoccurring meeting, as well as then the city is invited to all the base plan review, final plan review, all this, the field review meetings. So we have like schedule of meetings from our designer and our PM on the project. So as far as timeline, I would say, you know, we're kicking off design in 2026. So you're going to have your scoping meeting that the city will be involved in. That will be starting in 2026. And then it'll take a year plus because there's so many signals here to design. You're looking at final plan completion in 2027 and then turn-in dates, you know, so we're 26, 27. We're in the perfect time to have that conversation now so that we bring those ideas. Well, we're already starting to bring those ideas, but even more input, bring them to the kickoff scoping meetings that the city participates in as well.
So when you get to the end of the design period and you have a design, is it your commitment to bring that to the city before it goes out for bids or the actual engineering work?
We invite them to the final plan completion meeting, which is right before we turn it in for construction. Final plan, like when we did review. Final plan review, yes.
So if we go to final plan review and it does not reflect what the city of East Lansing would want, it sounds like it goes to construction the next day.
No, not the next day. From final plan review, there's time to incorporate the comments we get from final plan review, but we don't have another meeting typically after final plan review.
And then I do think, Vice Chair Warner, we can add this to our unfinished business agenda. So we are reminded to ask Stephen for updates as 2026 comes, you know, quickly, in about a month and a half. So we can kind of ask Stephen to provide an update when you're having those informal meetings with MDOT, throughout, you know, 2026, 2027 and beyond, and whatnot.
And we can get a better project schedule for you, Stephen, because right now I have tentative dates in my mind, but the project manager will have a proposed schedule.
And NDOT's been a great partner, obviously, in this, like, as we continue having meetings and just getting to know their team and everything, it's been really transparent and everything, so I'm really looking forward to partnering with NDOT and looking at these signals as they come through.
I wanted to add that, you know, at the risk, I wanted to say that, you know, Stephen does a great job of bringing the public's concerns to us. I mean, all of the intersections that are in this worksheet here, the left turn phasing studies, I mean, they come up every meeting. Stephen reiterates, hey, I'm still getting these.
Yeah, he does a great job. Absolutely.
I guess we're still looking into it. So I want to be very clear, Stephen's great. He's at the top of our.
Yeah, we have lots of good notes to incorporate.
Any other questions for MDOT at this time? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I know we are beyond our 8 p.m. We're gone by 17 minutes. I know, Stephen, we were going to have a preliminary discussion on our neighborhood action plan update, along with Craft's request agenda item. Do you just want to briefly kind of mention the preliminary, like, I don't think we'll have enough time to actually have a good discussion, but just to kind of mention what you think will happen with our December meeting?
Yeah, so we are asking our consultant right now, Fishbeck, to review that and seeing what their staff has capacity for. I think they mentioned they would be willing to do that. So we want to be able to bring some good information to the December meeting. There is some really good, NOAA has submitted and it wasn't able to make it to the packet, but it was emailed out. So I'd encourage everybody to read that for sure. That's like a draft from the bicycle friendly communities. Yes. Oh, did it? Okay, it made it. Okay, good. So I would anticipate that there would be some pretty good discussion in the December one, and we can move, you know, by that time, even more so than at this meeting, that we can maybe look at incorporating and have a good discussion and what that first draft would look like, and move forward on it pretty quickly. We do hope to have something from the consultant at that meeting.
So yeah, so what kind of, you want to speak, Noah?
What was the consultant asked for? Would they give us a new traffic calming action plan, make this one better to fit these problems that we gave them, or?
Not sure yet. I think it would just look like a revision to the plan, or like recommendations, or at least, you know, some kind of, what we were asking for is a comparison to other, communities, and, any other recommendations. So not sure what that looks like yet.
Okay.
And I think the whole point of revisiting this document is to make it easier for residents, but also make it easier for what our role is to, evaluate these proposals. Because I will say the last 3 to 6 months, I've been here for 4 years. I've never had a busier time the last 4 or 5 meetings of trying to evaluate and be consistent in how we make recommendations to city council. So that's where we kind of thought maybe revisiting our action plan to make it clear what our role is, but also giving residents a better indication of like what the thresholds are, because it shouldn't prevent them from seeking solutions if they're having speeding or concerns with their streets. So that's kind of how it will occur. So hopefully by December, we'll have that better discussion going forward.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we ran out of time, but Noah put a lot of East Lansing bike friendly community put a lot of effort into that plan. And I think part of the idea is that the people involved, although I did most of the work, have a lot of knowledge and expertise and have done in-depth research, albeit from a layman's perspective. But, if you research the literature and the research by engineers and traffic experts, then I think you can be confident about your recommendations. The idea was we have this expertise, maybe, and we're residents and we know what it feels like. So maybe if we could share that with the city rather than hiring an expensive outside consultant to do the whole thing, this could be the basis at least. It wouldn't be like, oh, here's the plan, take it or leave it. It's like, it would initiate a discussion, but basically kind of it would both save the city money, reflect the expertise of people who are involved in these issues. But yeah, it's unfortunate we didn't have time to discuss it.
Yeah, no, and I think we'll have a good
Hopefully
meeting
in December, yeah.
Especially talking about going back to the role of the commission, like what does timely mean, and kind of putting some clarification of like when petition or an action plan is filed, like how long do we actually wait to have a hearing, take action? It just setting out those guidelines better. So there's not more, vagueness of when the city takes or does not take action. I know is a big issue. So we'll kind of continue having this discussion, save the thoughts for our December meeting. And then Juan, I know we don't have enough time to go to 4.4.
Yeah, again, that was very simple, but I think we're already way over time. So I don't want to force people to stay here. I myself have to probably go use the bathroom. and all
We'll keep
that.
it on. We'll see where we can kind of put it into a future meeting, but we haven't forgotten.
Well, I definitely want it on the December meeting because it finally made it into the November meeting. So could it be on the agenda for December?
Yeah, we'll talk about it, and we'll see what we'll do, but it will eventually be on either December or January meeting.
Because it's a very simple request, so
yeah,
that's why I
yeah.
don't see why we should wait on it anymore. Oh,
And
and
then-
you can call me Adon, by the way, if you,
Adon,
I would
okay.
prefer you call me Adon.
Okay, Adon.
Eventually, it feels like we should have multiple meetings in a month so that we catch up, right? Like, how long are we going to keep pushing the second half of our agenda out until city council wants us to meet with a week's notice on an off week and like, let's just plan 2 meetings in January, right? Is that maybe something we could think about between now and December?
Yeah, and I think that's a good issue for the new chair to bring up, my term ends in December, or my chairman ends in December, so I do think that's something that we can consider. A future chair could bring that discussion up for what we want to do. So on that, we'll kind of move that to a different meeting, and then the unfinished business agenda, again, this has been on our docket for 4 meetings now. So I'm just gonna slightly push if there's an appetite to approve our administrative rules, knowing that I have a feeling if I push this to December, we're gonna be in the same pickle that it's never gonna actually get acted on. And I just think we should take the time to actually approve our administrative rules to have clearer guidelines of what the role is of a chair, vice chair. These have been approved by the city council with the city attorney's blessing. It just awaits our final approval.
So moved.
Motion made by Vander Gallion, seconded by Ankita. Discussion. This has been my baby for a year and a half, so I have no other comments to make. So all those, and seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, motion passes. Stephen, if you could put these administrative rules on our city website. So they're a public document to advise future chairs and council, commission members what the role is for our transition meetings. There are no committee reports. We'll do a quick announcement and board member. Last week in a stormwater meeting with other chairs and vice chairs of our citizen-run led commissions. It was a good. The city is working on a master plan to kind of reduce stormwater. The biggest takeaway is that our city is old, and that there is half of the city that does not have separation from sewer and stormwater, and the newer construction is separated, which affects residents with flooding when we get torrential rainfall. So the city is working on plans and proposals, and I represented the Transportation Commission on what the concerns that we've experienced with just flooding in general with city streets. So it was a good discussion, and that took place last week. So those are my comments, and then we'll just go around that side. So Vice Chair Warner.
That's for making that a priority. Yeah. I made enough comments, so no more comments.
I reached out to the MSU traffic department as we had a discussion. I was not there in the last meeting. We had a change of date. The students at MSU, at the planning department are open if we as a commission want to collaborate with them and start a traffic awareness and calming. We are already on the way of making posters. I will hopefully have them by next week. Once I have them, I'll share them here. And we are going to see how we can circulate that information throughout the departments at MSU. That's the update on the last.
Thank you.
I have a question. You mentioned CATA. Have we heard anything about their big review that they're doing this year? Okay.
About the review of all of the.
Yeah, so when the director of programming was here and spoke to us about the state road route, his response was, this will be looked at with the rest of our system because we're going to do a system-wide review this year. And I said, we would love to be as included in that as you would allow us. And he never responded.
Yeah,
I
we
didn't
can
know
reach
if
out to
anybody
them.
else.
Again, we're still kind of waiting on a response from them for the Harrison Road project as well.
Okay.
So, yep.
Okay, thanks. I don't have anything else.
Will. No comment.
Evan?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing no other announcements or board member comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second.
Motion made by Evan Martin, seconded by Noah Vandergalen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? We are adjourned at 8:27 PM.